So, as you can all guess and see now, the pennies dropped for me that you didn't have any sound. So I'll start again because the pictures will just be, you'll think, what the heck? So I know tonight's one's obviously going to run over what I thought would be about 20, 25 minutes, but we are getting there little by little. And I did say at the very start, what I said was, I'm going to end up making a clown of myself at some points in a bit of a numpty, and it didn't take long on the first video. So I'm repeating myself here, but the first video I did say that don't let your future dictate your past, let your past dictate your future, which is completely the wrong way around. It's don't I've written it down. Don't let your past dictate your future, let your future dictate your past. Now, yeah, so I said that completely the wrong way around the first time. And again, just a quick recap, very quickly, just to let anyone who's just logged on who hasn't seen the first video. The purpose of this video is for me to come on once a week and give a testimony each time about my life as a paraplegic over the last 7 years, 7.5 years. It's been a roller coaster ride, mostly downs with a few good things, but predominantly sent me into some real as dark and as low as you can possibly get, and a real bad substance addiction, two substance addictions. Yeah, and it's led me here to the Reach Out Ministries in Hartlepool, which has saved my life really. It's going to change my life, and I know that for a fact. And yeah, so that's where we are. And last time I did a bit of a recap. I started on just letting people know a bit about me before I talk about being here. So I said I'm just quickly repeating myself. At the time of my accident, I was working as a legal executive for an insurance company, and I was extremely fit, very sport orientated. Did a lot of marathon running, and great enough run a few times, and did a lot of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and I've done an MMA fight, played football every other week with friends and stuff. So sport growing up was my life. So and I was in a relationship with someone who at the time we thought we'd spend the rest of our lives together, as you do when you meet that person. And we had a brand new house and plans and all the things that your ducks in a row, so to speak. And on a lovely sunny day in May 2015, unfortunately, I was involved in an accident, and I stress it was an accident. The person didn't go out on that day like looking to hit someone on a motorbike, and I didn't go out that day looking to have a collision with a car. Unfortunately, it happened, and it left me paralyzed from this area. So it's T5, T6. And the main thing I can remember, the main word I can use afterwards is lost, completely lost. But it took me, strangely, which are probably different to a few people who may be in my position in terms of being paralyzed. It took me a bit of time to get to that realization of being lost, because at the time of the accident, I was just so motivated to try and beat my prognosis. I was told after a very short amount of hours that you'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, you'll never walk again. Now, I just wouldn't accept that. There's a 2 year window of recovery, and I just thought for that 2 years, I will do everything in my power, because then I'll have no regrets to get the best recovery I can. So I very quickly found a treatment in Thailand. Now, I was only the sixth person in the world to do the treatment. Um, and I asked my consultant about it. He'd never even heard of it, which I found discouraging, but that's beyond the point really. And I asked him if I was able to start taking steps after doing this treatment, could I come back to the hospital and he treat me for recovery? And he said that if I was able to take any steps, he would bring me in and I could have rehab. So that was also kind of for me the main selling point, that I knew I was going to go to Thailand, but then I would have on the sort of the back end of that, I would have the recovery here at home, and the treatment I did come at a financial substantial cost, and to know that I would have the treatment, the main rehab here, was a big selling point. So anyway, that led me to go to Thailand in November 2015, 5 months after my accident. I went on my own because I didn't want it to be a holiday. I didn't wasn't interested in seeing any of the sights. I could do that later on in my life. At the time, it was this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I will train, sleep, eat, repeat, train, eat, sleep, repeat. Every day had to be better than the day before in terms of improvements. Now, I was the only person after doing the treatment um, who at that time in the world was able to stand. So that's the picture of me, which again, I'm repeating some of these pictures, but this was a picture of me on Christmas Day in 2015. Now, as a result of that, the company who I did the treatment with actually asked me to come back as an ambassador for the treatment and to work with them with other patients around the world and not to go back to the job I had before. Now, it was this was the point I was again. I'm just repeating myself, but the point I was talking previously was that um, it was great in a way because I was getting these improvements, fantastic. However, it wasn't because I wasn't accepting and in denial with my prognosis of what actually happened to me. I thought in my head, oh wow, I'm going to walk again. I'm going to get my. At the time, unfortunately, I separated from my partner. Nobody's fault, just the way the circumstances fell. And I thought, oh, I'll get her back. I'll get my house back. I'll get my career back. I'll get all my sports back. I don't need to think about being paralyzed. And I can vividly remember so clearly that so many times I'd start crying and I'd physically slap myself in the head to say, "Don't you dare cry! Like you're gonna beat this." And there's a fine line between pride and proud, and just I don't know, stupid's not really fair of a word, but yeah, denial. Just couldn't face where I was. So, but at the time, as I say, I went to Thailand, come back, and I went and saw my consultant. Unfortunately, he bluntly just said that he didn't, in a month of Sundays, think I'd get the recovery that I got. So he said if he was to bring me back in for rehab, it would cause a floodgate sort of scenario, and every man and their dog would then want to come back and potentially do treatment. So I was refused the rehab, and that ultimately just I lost everything already to then this one light of hope to lose that as well. It just completely knocked everything out of my sails, all the wind out of my sails even. And yeah, that was when my first experience of like being lost, not having a clue what to do, where I was going to go next, what my life was going to hold, didn't have any future, and the only thing I could think of was I desperately wanted to get back to Thailand. I took out two huge loans and I was bankrupted myself basically. And my friends, very close friends, they know who they are, did an amazing gesture of a GoFundMe, but a kind of overnight one where they just text all of the lads who I'm friends with and said, rather than go out this weekend or buy a takeaway or go to the cinema, whatever it may be, if you can all just put something in to the pot for me to go back to Thailand, and they raised a lot of money, and I'm forever grateful for that. So on the second trip, when I went back, this is the reference to this picture. So again, I'm making more improvements. I'm starting to walk through parallel bars on my own, which is fantastic in my head. I'm beating this. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to get it all back. Great. People are, we're starting to believe this now, and I'm believing it myself. And then I came back home again for a short period of time because I was there for 16 weeks that time. And it was more a case of just mental tiredness as opposed to physical tiredness because I was mentally just drained by that point. So I come back for a short period, and then for a third time I went back again, and this was me on my 30th birthday, able to stand on my own. The bar's not actually touching my back there or my backside even. I'm so again more improvements, like getting further and further and further down the line. So I'm physically here, probably paralyzed 2.5 years down the road, but mentally not one day. Um, Now, eventually came home and I had some bars fitted at home, so I was able to stand for an hour on my own and walk through my bars, and I did this every day. And I was posting these videos and pictures on behalf of the company who did the treatment, just to kind of give other people around the world, hope that there are things out there and things medical technology is making advancements, which was great. However, it got to the point where um, it was about 3 years on that my older brother came and saw me, and my older brother and I are like this, and he just sat me down and was really frank and just said, "Look, Andy, we admire you so much, mate. The way you've coped with it all is just unbelievable. You lost everything. You still, you don't even look like you've had a bad day, but you are paralyzed, mate, and you've got to accept that and get on with your life. Because for maybe 3.5 years at that point, my life has just been on a pause button, uh, and it really hit home coming from him. And yeah, for me though, sadly, that was day one because I hadn't accepted it for one day. My family, though, the dust, never settled, but the dust had kind of cleared a little bit, and they were used to me being in this position now, and they'd accepted it and they'd moved on. For me, that hadn't even begun, and it hit me like a Mike Tyson left hook, and it's harder than the car that caused it. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people who now relate to that feeling, and they're at the day one at the time of their accident, and that's the lost feeling I was feeling, and it just fell off a waterfall effect, and I was using drugs, ketamine at the time, very heavily just to shut my thoughts off. I couldn't face my reality. I couldn't deal with it. And yeah, just a complete and utter mess. And I couldn't tell my family. I'd created this fake. Well, it wasn't fake. It's about unfair myself. I'd created this persona of Superman by not accepting it and moving on for 3.5 years. That by this time people are like, wow, how is he not broken down there? So I didn't know how to explain to people, wow, actually now I have completely, like a stack of cards just fallen. And at that time I got used the word inspirational all the time. I've got some notes here if I'm looking down. And yeah, I hated the word inspiration because I wasn't an inspiration at that time. I was a complete mess. I was posting videos of me standing, but then on a night and on an evening, even sometimes to the side, as ashamed as I am to admit it, I was heavily using ketamine to just get through the day. And yeah, it just completely messed me up like really, really badly. And it spiraled really badly out of control, to the point where I ended up, which I'm going to touch on in a later video in more depth, but I ended up having an attempt on my life, because I just couldn't tell people how I felt. I felt like I was just causing more problems for my family, my parents. I didn't have a future. I just didn't know what to do, and I was completely lost. And I thought I was a burden on everyone, and I felt like I was a burden on my friends, my loved ones, and everything. So I thought I'll just do everyone a favor here and myself a favor and go. And ultimately, which I'll touch on in much more detail, um, ultimately I realized now that I was so wrong, but it yeah, I had to go through one of the worst experiences anyone could ever go through, but it ultimately was for me what I needed to go through to be have that acceptance. uh, and yeah, it kind of opened up a lot of reality for me. And it's I did get some. Sorry, I'm going to kind of divert because I did get some questions which touches upon this a little bit, from few people before I came online. One which was one of the questions is how he put how does being paralytic affect your mental health? Now I'm assuming he means paraplegic because I've never been paralytic, but uh, so I kind of have touched on it. Yeah, so being paraplegic in terms of my mental health at the start, as I say, I'm not the type of person who's just going to be told something and they're just going to accept it. I'll make my own judgment call on anything. I don't stereotype anybody. If someone says, you know, something about somebody, I'll make my own judgment on that person. I'm not very easily kind of led in that sense, and I was told very quickly, like within hours after my operation on to repair my spine, I would never walk again. I'd be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. My girlfriend and my mum on the floor crying in the hospital. I just eyeballed the doctor and said, "Has anyone ever walked again in my position?" Well, a very small percentage. That was all I needed to hear. Please leave. And yeah, like so, I was very dogged, very determined to just do everything to get myself out of this position. Now that's great to have that kind of that strength and that grit and determination, but also there's a fine line between pride and almost just denial. And I went over that line and it came back to bite me a little bit. Well, yeah, a lot, a little bit of a silly statement to be honest. So in terms of my mental health, though, yeah, it plummeted. It's like putting your life into a tumble dryer. You know, you've got all these plans for your life and all these things that you want to do, and over a split second, they're gone. And yeah, and you don't know who to turn to. You know, you might meet people in the hospital, but everyone's accidents are different. Everyone's circumstances at the time are different. So, and you know, my friends can never really truly relate to what I'm going through, so I can't really speak to them about it. And my mum can't. My mum's never spoke to another mum whose son's paralyzed, and I'm sure there's a lot of other mums out there. So, one thing I am going to do in the future is a parent discussion where I'm more than happy to speak to parents who've got sons or daughters who have become paralyzed or, you know, had accidents that left them with disabilities. And I'd love to speak to them and give them any advice, any support, anything I can, because my mum and dad have gone through hell and back and had zero support from anyone and any organization apart from them coming here, which I touched on my last video. And it took us to come to a Christian rehab 7.5 years later in Hartlepool for my mum and dad to get more support in one conversation with Pastor Colin in half an hour than they have in 7.5 years. And they'll continue to get that support from here along with myself. And to see the weight lifted off my mum's shoulders in that half an hour was priceless. So if I can give some support along the way as well to other families, friends, brothers, sisters, and obviously the individuals themselves, then you know that's for me the main goal of this whole, you know, what we're doing here. Um, Another question that I did get also was, can I still drive? Yeah, I can. And again, for me, I say all the time, I broke my back. I didn't have a brain transplant. I am still very much like adrenaline. I love cars. I've always been a bit of a petrol head. And it's the independence that my dad very quickly said, you will need independence. So we'll try and get you driving as soon as possible. One of the things that frustrated us as a family, which again I want to just get out there, is we very quickly, because I had a manual car at the time, which I couldn't then drive. Naturally, I can't use my feet. We ended up, my family all chipped in and they bought me a manual car, and we paid thousands of pounds for adaptions to adapt that car. It came to a total of 10,000, I think, around that, possibly a tiny bit more. And for 2 years, I had that car, and it wasn't until me being at a wheelchair rugby I was, and one of the guys there says, "Oh, I get my motability car tomorrow," and I was saying, "What's a motability car?" Now, motability car, you are entitled to a motability car through your PIP, and you're entitled to the adaptions. It just comes automatically out your PIP. So we paid all this money without knowing for 2.5 years when I would have been entitled to it for free. So if there's anyone else out there again who knows someone who's paralyzed, recently paralyzed, I just let them know that there's a mobility scheme online. There's most garages. I drive a Mini Cooper S, and it cost me £250 deposit, and I've just got to put petrol in it. Now we spent £10,000 on a car that wasn't anywhere near as nice a car as that. And yeah, if we'd only known, there's no support, there's no guidance. So for me, another passion for me is just to help people not fall into these little pitfalls, that stumbling blocks that they do add up, and the discouragements and the knockdowns, and it always seems to just be a bit bad news and doom and gloom. So that's, you know, and the independence of me being able to still drive is phenomenal for me, especially being, as I say, I like cars. So to have a car that I can still at times, I shouldn't say it because my mum will tell me off, but still drive fast at times because that's just the way I am. I say I'm still an idiot ultimately. I'm not going to change. Uh, and one of the other final questions I got was, can I still have sex and have children? Now, again, a lot of people are a bit phased to ask me this question. Why, people can ask me anything. Nothing will ever phase me. And it's something that when I had my accident, I was 29 years old in a relationship with someone. It's one of the first things I wanted to know. And I'm sure, again, anyone else out there who's become paralyzed or knows someone who's just become paralyzed, I'm sure they're thinking the same. I was told, it's a little bit of a funny kind of, I suppose, maybe too much information, so I apologise for some people who think that. But I was told very quickly I would never, I may not be able to get an erection again, so ultimately have sex. It would happen. It would happen naturally if I did get one, but it would be a little bit down the line once I'd recovered. Cut long story short, I was getting washed one day in the unit by a nurse and a student nurse who'd come to for every Wednesday, I think. And as the student nurse was washing me, I just saw her eyes kind of, and then I moved the towel out the way, and yeah, I was best way to put it. Yeah, I was back in the game. That's the best way to put it. And yeah, so that was a very very good day in the early days. And ultimately, I can still have sex. Yeah, um, it is a little bit different. I'll be brutally honest. I don't have the sensation uh, physically in that area, but I have more of a mental and sensation enhanced on the bits of my body that I can still feel. And again, can I still have children? Yes, I can. I can have children through IVF. So I know I've always been very paternal, and one day definitely would love to have children. So that was a huge, massive boost for me at the time to find out that one day. And I've been praying since I've been here to find that one day I will have a family of my own. So yeah, I appreciated those questions. And again, if anyone else in the future has any other questions, then I'm more than happy to run through them. And there's nothing that anyone couldn't ask me. So yeah, don't hesitate. And to be honest, guys, as I say, we've ran over here. That's as far as I was going to touch on tonight. In my next testimony, I'm going to talk a little bit more about maybe the mental health side of things, and ultimately that does lead to, as I say, me sadly having an attempt at my life, and it was a lot more that then followed in terms of my drug addiction and just some things that happened sadly in my life, which I want to share because ultimately it's going to be able to help other people and to prevent them from having to go through those horrible experiences. And my family, they've had to go through them, my friends as well. So I talk a lot about collateral damage because it's not just me. I don't see my mum in tears breaking down, and my family and friends, and I'm sure there's a lot of other families are out there as well. So yeah, so that's it for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in, and yeah, I just want to say a big thanks to everyone here. God bless everyone here at Reach Out. God bless Pastor Colin, everyone here, the lads, their families. I will just finish on a really nice story. All last week, I'd been praying for a friend who I didn't get to see before I went away, who had been struggling with addiction himself. I'm sure he won't mind me saying, so I won't name his name. And I'm extremely close to his family. His brother is one of my best friends, and his girlfriend has changed my life since May working with me as a mental wealth coach. And their family mean a huge, great deal to me. So I'd been praying every day last week for this person because I knew he'd been struggling. And today I was working on the computer for this video, and the door opened, and he walked in with his mum and sister. And the lads actually thought it was my family by my reaction because I couldn't believe it. So, I'd been praying for him, and my prayers were actually answered because he came and he's here now and he's settled in great, and we're all going to look out for him. So, yeah, so it's just a really nice moment for me, and I think it's just a nice moment to share with everybody. And I'm sure his family, if they're watching, they'll be pleased to know that as well. So, yeah, so God bless everyone here. God bless their families, and I'll check in with you all next week with sound.